Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Board Game Buffet podcast, episode number 95. My name is Dean.
And this is Graham.
And Graham, we are post-Canada Day. We're post-July 4th, just barely. I guess technically it is the 4th today, but most people probably celebrated yesterday. So all the partying's been done. Now it's just left to clean up and maybe have a nice casual game day. It won't happen for me, but for other people, they can have that. How was your holiday weekend?
It was weird. So we have Canada Day, which for us is July 1st. So I got July 1st off from work, but my wife Lella didn't. She works for a French company, and because they're a vaccine company, so they're constantly making vaccines and production and tests and all that. If the holiday ever falls in the middle of the week, they don't take that time off. They'll get like the Friday off instead. So because it happened on a Thursday, she didn't get Thursday off. She got Friday off instead. So we kind of had opposite days. But the company I work for also gave us Friday off. So I had Thursday and Friday off. She only had Friday off. So we celebrated our Canada Day on Friday. And we had two friends over on Friday. And that was our holiday day, was kind of a day late when everybody else was kind of going back to work. We were on holiday that day. But having a 4-day weekend kind of throws me off. Like, we're recording this on July 4th on a Sunday. And I don't know, it feels like I'm skipping work or something. But, we had a nice holiday day, kind of low key. Just did some grilling outside and played a couple games. So it was good.
Yeah, I don't know what they did down here. I didn't necessarily hear any fireworks. Maybe they'll do fireworks today, but the hotel I'm in, they're in the middle of repairing it still from last year's hurricane. And they've been doing all this work outside every day outside my room. There's been this lift that's been going up and down outside my window, or stopping right in front of my window. So I'm like sitting here working. I'm like staring at this guy on this on this lift as he's like working around my window, putting caulking up and siding. But 2 days ago, they came up and it's still there. So I can't see out my window. I'm shrouded in plastic. So I'm hermetically sealed into my room. So I don't know if fireworks took place or didn't take place, but it's good to know that those French vaccine companies are working hard and not taking a day off. Maybe there is hope for herpes after all. Yeah.
But we should let our listeners know that we are completely dedicated to our podcast. We recorded on Canada Day. Now we're recording on July 4th. Was it Independence Day? What's the actual name for July 4th?
Independence Day.
Independence Day.
I mean, we call it July 4th, but I mean, it's probably technically Independence Day. Now, what do you plan on doing for celebrating for July 4th?
We're actually going to someone's birthday party.
Can you at least have sparklers?
July 4th for us is absolutely nothing. Like,
I can't believe that.
So on July 1st, there was fireworks, but there'll be no fireworks today because it's just a Sunday to us.
Well, I would imagine, well, probably for you guys, same as us, I imagine certain areas, probably fireworks might be banned right now because of all the heat and the dry weather. You don't want to be causing too many fires.
Around us, we've actually had a fairly wet week. It's rained almost every day. But yeah, like out west where the heat is, I doubt very much that they have fireworks. But
right,
there was fireworks for sale, and we heard fireworks on July 1st. So,
well, I got some. Well, I didn't really get the news. I came across some very disturbing and gut wrenching news on the internet yesterday that just it really hit me to the core. I mean, I didn't weep, but I was upset, and I shook my head in disbelief. Because as you know, I mean, so our top 5 lists, we spent some time doing some research on them and going through the information. So I was looking last night, I was making my top 5 list. And as I perused through my collection and through my games played, I then got onto your game collection list. and filtered out all your expansions. But as I was going through, I came across some information that I'm just like, I knew you didn't particularly care for these games, but when I saw what you rated Eldritch Horror and Lorenzo El Magnifico,
Oh,
I a little piece of me died, I think. I mean, a 5.8 for Lorenzo and a 5.9 for Eldritch Horror.
oh yeah, you're right. I need to lower those.
I I can't believe. I mean, I all this time I thought maybe you were just ha ha. It was a joke. You really do like them, but to see it, visually, and to see it posted out there for the public to see, and then when I saw you rated some other games, like you really consider those games to be better than those two. Uh, it hurt. It hurt just a little bit.
Well, I'll let you know that Lella wanted to play a game last night.
Mm,
So the game she pulled off the shelf was Arkham Horror.
yeah.
So we actually played. Well, it's funny. We played half a game of Arkham Horror last night. We're going to finish it today.
So does she prefer Arkham over like Mansions of Madness?
We've only played Mansion of Madness. Her and I have only played it 2 or 3 times. I think maybe
Okay.
twice. I've played Mansions of Madness more as a solo than anything else.
Okay.
She definitely likes Arkham Horror better than Eldritch Horror. For whatever reason, she wasn't a big fan of Eldritch Horror. She likes the original Arkham Horror. And
Right.
I own Arkham Horror second edition and third edition, but she pulled second edition off the shelf.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
we're going old school.
All right. Now, what did she think about Cthulhu Death May Die? Did she like that?
It was okay for her. I don't. It was one of those things. We played it, and all of us that played it just kind of went, It's just kind of lackluster in our opinion. For me, I think I may prefer Death May Die slightly over Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror. But they're all around the same for me. Like none of them are like a 9 out of 10 for me. They're all
Sure.
5.5 to maybe 6.5 type of range, because I don't know. We've talked about why I dislike Eldritch Horror and Arkham Horror before, and Death May Die is just a copy and paste. In my opinion, it's just a copy and paste on so many other minis on a map game that
Right.
kind of looked at that and kind of went, there's nothing interesting here for me.
Have you ever had her play Fate of the Elder Gods?
Yeah, she likes Fate of the Elder Gods.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, obviously her go-to, she can't play because you're just too cheap to buy it, and that would be Cthulhu Wars.
She wanted to play Cthulhu Wars. So all of us played Cthulhu Wars down at Dice Tower last time we were all down there. She enjoyed it, but I don't think even she would say that it's worth the money.
Come on. Come on now. She doesn't care about that.
Actually, for that she does, because when you tell her how much that base game is, and she'd want, I think there's like a library expansion or a librarian's expansion or something like that. She'd want that too, and those are like $50-$60. She's like, the game is fine, like it's an enjoyable game, but it's not a $300 entertainment value.
She's looking at that, or she's like, well, I could get this amount of glass. I could get one sheet of glass for the price of this game.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, I just wanted to tell you how much you hurt me yesterday. So I also had to go through, because I didn't think any of the games on my top 5 list this time would be in danger of being on my to the vault list, but I had to go through because I couldn't remember the last game that you had picked. So I think what I'm going to do is I wrote both of our lists down. I'm going to have to make a pinned post to the Facebook page or whatever, because I couldn't remember all the ones I picked for you, and I couldn't remember the last one you had picked for me. Yeah, I forgot about Dead of Winter.
I couldn't remember all the ones you'd picked for me, but we'll get into the top 5 list of how I did it. But there was only one that I was kind of questioning, so I decided to leave it off because it's like I don't remember whether Dean picked that for me or not. Did you pick Dominant Species for me?
No.
No? Okay. I didn't think you had, but I kept it off my list anyway.
Yeah, no. For you, I had Food Chain, Trajan, Ticket to Ride, Lobotomy, and Race for the Galaxy.
Okay. None of those are on my list because none of them meet our top 5 criteria.
Right. And that's why I was looking at mine like, no, I said, I don't think there's going to be anything to have to worry about. So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, before we get into this top 5 list, we keep alluding about and referencing, we do need to talk about some games that we've played. So for the first bite segment, I've only got one. I'm a slacker this time. So Graham's going to go first.
One time a year, you have 2 games. That was just the last episode. Now all of a sudden you're back to the single one.
One time a year. I'm not like, doing the lion's share of the work of playing more games than Graham.
And before we get into first bites, I just want to give a shout out to our Patreon backers at the top tier. They kind of help us make the show. So I want to give a shout out to Tom and Viger. Very much appreciated. And of course, all of our other Patreons. But one of the things for being a top tier patron is you get a shout out on the show. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I'm sure Dean appreciates that as well.
I most certainly do.
Okay. So my first bite is actually a game that I've owned for 2 years now. It was a Kickstarter game. I bought it when the Kickstarter hit retail from the first Kickstarter because I knew I wanted it, and I bought it. But you need more. It's more than 2 players, so I wanted to get all 4 or 5 of us to get and play this game. And of course, then the pandemic hit. So it's kind of been sitting on my shelf. I said, next time all 4 of us get together, we need to play this game. And we've only been able to get all 4 of us together a few times. And when we I've had review games that I needed to get played. So this was not going to be a review game. This was a fun game. This is a game called Nemesis. This is a semi-co-op game. It is basically like Alien, the first movie of Alien, in which people wake up on the ship and each person plays a different archetype. So there's the scout, there's the captain, there's the soldier, there's the scientist, there's the mechanic, basically just generic type of people. And there are intruders on the ship, which are aliens. And this is a semi-co-op because at the beginning of the game, you're dealt 2 objective cards. So everybody kind of gets all their character and the starting equipment for the character, kind of like a typical co-op game or minis game. You set up the board. So the always thing that we found funny was you don't know the layout of the ship. So you put all the rooms out face down, but you don't know what they are. And there's the intruders on the ship, and everybody's dealt their 2 objectives. The first time someone encounters one of these aliens, you have to pick which objective you're going to do. So there's a personal objective or there's a corporate objective. And the objectives could be you are the only survivor on the left on the ship. Or it could be you want to get to an escape pod with, an egg, like a larva with you. Or it could be that you want the ship to get to Earth, those type of things. Now, to win, you have to survive and you have to have met your objective. And there can be multiple winners, but you don't know what other people need to win. So you are playing this game. And of course, you are trying to, every time you explore an area, you flip over to find out what room it is. So it could be like an armory where you can get more ammo. It could be the canteen to get food to heal some wounds. It could be surgery, different types of things. And then there's going to be a little marker on it. And that little marker will tell you what happens in the room. It's going to tell you how much equipment's there and whether it's a slime room, for example, or there's a door that closes behind you when you walk in the room, or those type of things. Every room you go into that's completely empty, you have to make a noise check. And the noise is going to be, I think a 8-sided die. I forget what it is, but there's a 1 through 4 because each room will have corridors on it. And it should say, this is corridor 1, this is corridor 2, this is corridor 3, corridor 4. So if you roll a 4, you put the noise marker on corridor 4. If there's ever 2 noise markers in the same corridor, one of these aliens pops up. Draw a shit out of the bag and it'll say, okay, you found an adult. So you put the adult mini on the board. You have actions so you can move. You can, of course, fight. A lot of the things you're going to be doing are going to be playing cards from your hand. So each character has a different set of cards. So I was the mechanic, which means a lot of my action cards were around fixing things or closing doors or opening doors or fixing the engine, things like that. Jason was playing the soldier. So a lot of his cards had to do with fighting. So it's kind of interesting like that, where everybody can do everything, but definitely some characters are better at certain things. and you are going around the ship. You have to try and keep the aliens to a minimum. But quite often, if you wanted to get to Earth, for example, that's one of your objectives, then you have to go to the cockpit, and the cockpit has A through D on it, and a little marker. The little marker starts on B, and there's a card beside it that's face down. So if you go to the cockpit, you have the option to look at that card, and it will say A says it's going to Earth, B says we're going to the moon, C says we're going to Venus, and D says we're going somewhere else. And then you kind of look at the marker and say, oh, it's on B. So we're not going to Earth, we're going to Venus, for example. So you put it down. So if you want to get to Earth, you may move that little chit on it to move it to A or whatever it is, whatever Earth was. One of your objectives could be that you need to go, if you need to get to Earth, and you also need to check the engines, because there's 3 different engines, and they will say whether they're good or bad. So there's 2 chits for each engine. One of them is good, one of them is bad. So if you go there, you can look at the top one and see whether it's good or bad. Then you have the option to switch the 2. So if you want to get to Earth, those are the type of things you do. If you want everyone to die, then you may want to change the navigation to say you're going to the Venus, which is going to kill everybody. Or you may go to the engine room and say, I'm repairing the engine, everybody. You look at them and you put the destruction one on top, because there's also escape pods on the ship. So you may want everyone to die. You still need to survive. So you may jump in the escape pod while you've sabotaged the ship without any, while lying to everybody, saying, no, don't worry. I'm the mechanic. I'll go check the engines. Everything's fine with the engines. The ship's going to survive. In the last couple of rounds, you jump in the escape pod and leave. There could be that you have to send a signal to Earth and survive. So you have to go to the comms room and send a signal, and you put it on your board saying you've signaled it. So each of these areas allows you to, and this is where the co-op trader aspect comes in, that you can say, I'm going to go fix the engines, because they're on the complete opposite side of the ship. So if you want to pilot the ship as one end, if you want to fix the engines, then complete the opposite. So I can say, Dean, go check where we're going, because we want the ship to survive, because we want it to get to Earth, and I'll go check the engines. So Dean goes, okay. So he goes off, and hopefully he's setting it to Earth, and I am sabotaging the engines, knowing that he's probably not going to spend 3 turns to get from where he is to the engines, because we only have 15 rounds to do this. There's also a self-destruct. So you may say, okay, everybody, let's get in the escape pods, and we'll just destroy the ship. So you can start that countdown. And once the countdown gets down to, I think it's 6 or whatever, when it gets down to 3, you can't stop it anymore. The ship is going to explode in 3 more turns. So everybody's kind of doing these things. You need to explore the ship. You need to be manipulating doors. There's going to be fires that pop up. You're going to have to heal yourself, all the while knowing that you have this secret objective. I think Dean knows my idea on my feelings about semi-co-op games. I generally don't like them. This one I actually enjoyed more than the other semi-co-op games I've played, because it isn't in Dead of Winter or things like that. You need to win the game and then see whether you win your personal objective. I didn't need the ship to survive for my objective to win. I needed to kill off everybody, which means all I cared about was opening up an escape pod and getting in the escape pod. That's all I cared about. So, I find with a lot of other co-op games, the co-op piece is very strong. We must stop the aliens from taking over the ship. We must make sure the ship survives. In this one, some people wanted that. Some people didn't care what happened to the ship. So that for them to win, they just needed to be the sole survivor, which I enjoyed, because it means that semi-co-op I thought worked better in this, because there wasn't a one final goal for everyone to reach, and then it was, did you collect enough toothpaste for your objective in Dead of Winter? This was, you could win the game by everyone else losing. Like, you could kill off everyone else. You could have the ship explode. You could have it go to Venus. You could have it do whatever. As long as you got off the ship, as long as you survived and you met your objective, it didn't matter how you survived, you could win the game, which I quite enjoyed. So it was enjoyable like that. It was probably a bit longer than I would have liked. Again, it was the first play, so it is a bit longer. The typical running time says between an hour and a half and 3 hours. We played it with 4 players. It worked quite well. When we revealed our objectives at the end, Lala's objective was to kill me because I was player 3, and her thing said kill off player 3. Now you can't intentionally kill someone. Like I can't pull out my pistol and say I'm going to shoot Dean's character, but I may be able to throw a grenade and damage everything in the room. If Dean's there, oops. Or if there's an alien in there and Dean's in there, I can close off all the doors. And Dean is trapped in there with the alien. He's got to kill it. Those type of things. So the other thing that this game has are contamination cards. Sometimes you can get contamination through melee fighting one of the aliens. So if you punch an alien, you get alien goo on you and you could be contaminated. So you add these contamination cards to your action deck. They have the red window technology, so you can't see what it is, but certain areas on the ship, you can scan yourself. So you take those red things that are in your hand and you put them in this little device and it will say infected or not infected. And what I enjoyed was if you never checked yourself, but you had some of those contamination cards in your deck, at the end, that's one of the end game steps you do. All the survivors then go through their cards in their deck to see whether they're infected or not. If you're infected, then you will lose because the alien bursts out of you and you die anyway. So I like that there were certain things you had to check. So that even if you thought you escaped, if you escaped with an alien breeding inside you, you still died anyway. So like I said, it was enjoyable. It's a little more overwrought than some other games. This is from Awaken Realms. So the rule book it's not bad, but it is like 20 something pages long. So it's not like a little quick other co-op game like a Pandemic where the rule book is like 4 or 5 pages long. This is okay. In this situation, this is what happens. In this situation, this is what happens. If on when the aliens move, they can't move through doors. But if there's more aliens on the board, or if you have to put an alien on a board, but you don't have any minis left, then it kind of resets and they go back in the bag. And there's this whole bag drawing thing. It was just, there's a lot of steps to do that when you're first learning the game. The first couple of rounds for us took I think we did 3 rounds like in an hour, but we did like the last 6 rounds in an hour. So it definitely sped up as we kind of got familiar with the rules and all that. So like I said, it was enjoyable. I really enjoyed the theme. One of my favorite movies is Alien and Alien. So this really feels like Alien. I was always puzzling why we didn't know the layout of the ship because we had to discover everything was. Like we just woke up going, oh, I remember the cockpit's there and the engine's there. I have no idea what's in the middle of it. But yeah, it's a game that I want to get back to the table. Everybody seemed to enjoy it. No one loved it, but we all enjoyed the semi-co-op aspect of it. So this is the first semi-co-op game I've played that I'm interested to get back to the table because I did actually enjoy that semi-co-op feel to it. So that is Nemesis, put up by Awaken Realms and designed by Adam Kwapinski. So,
sure. Okay, so a couple of questions. So for the contamination part, if you never, so you said if you never scan yourself, you have to do it at the end of the game and you'll lose or whatever. So if you scan yourself in the middle of the game, you see you're infected. Is there a way to cure yourself?
You can go so if you scan yourself in the middle of the game and you find, so some of them places you can go to say, scan all the cards in your hand and anything that's not infected, you get rid of. If you ever scan an infected card, you put a larva on your character. So everybody knows you're infected, but you can go to the surgery room. Okay. And one of the actions there is to remove the creature from you, and then you get rid of the card, and you're no longer contaminated. So there are ways to get rid of it during the game if you know that you are infected.
Okay, and then so the role that you have, or you're playing a character, and then I guess I'm assuming you're randomly determining if you are. Are you determining if you're like an alien or if you're?
So everybody's human.
Okay.
The only thing you're randomly doing is deciding what your objective is going to be.
So the objective is the one that
will determine whether or not
you want to blow up a shit, if you want to whatever. So I guess my question is it because you said it in this game, it doesn't really matter. Like you don't need the ship to survive in order to win the game.
Yeah.
So is it really a semi co-op or is it just
Well, it is a semi co-op because the escape pods don't open until something happens.
okay?
So either the first person dies, and that's one thing I just kind of disliked about it. There is player elimination.
Mhm.
As soon as one of the characters dies, that's when the escape pods open, or after a certain period of time, it opens. So if the ship explodes, or there's fires, or there's too many malfunctions on the ship, you're never going to get to the point for those things to open. So there you have to keep the ship going for at least half the game before
So
those are
for
open.
yeah, so for most of the people's objectives, I'm assuming that they cannot do it all on their own. Like you need some of the other characters to, if something on your objective says, yeah, we need the engines to be at whatever, but you're not, you're not the mechanic. You've got to rely on the mechanic to do that. Is that where the semi co-op part comes into? Like you're given too many things where you couldn't possibly do it on your own, or you're given things where it's not your forte to
It's it's
meet
a
that objective.
it's a bit of both.
Okay.
So for one action, you can move to an adjacent room. You only
Mhm.
get 2 actions per turn. Well, the cockpit is literally on one side of the ship, and the engines are on the opposite side of the ship. And you'd have to spend like I think it's 2 to 3 turns to get from one to the other. Then when you get there, it takes both of your actions to do whatever the room action is. So if you're in the cockpit, you have to spend an entire turn looking at the card and then adjusting the destination. And then so that would be you start in the middle. It'd be 1 to 2 turns to get to the cockpit, and then 2 to 3 turns to get to the engine. And in both places, you have to spend basically an entire round. So just to do those 2 things to make sure you're going to Earth
Mhm.
is going to be at least half the game for one person to do it. Then you have to get to the hibernation area and do the hibernation action so you can hibernate. Because if the ship jumps, so at the end of the time track, the ship will jump if it's still there. If anybody's left in the corridors at that time, so if they're not in the hibernation or they haven't been in the escape pod, they're going to die because of the G forces. So from the middle to one side of the ship, do the process there, get to the engines, get to all 3 engines. So that's going to be, so many actions to get in between them. I don't think you would physically have enough time to do everything yourself, to go to the cockpit, to go to each engine. Each engine will take a turn to check, to get back to the hibernation and get yourself into hibernation. That's assuming that you never run across any aliens.
So for your objective card,
Yeah.
is it just, I mean, what does it say? Does it have like a list of like a checklist of you need to have these 5 things,
No. So
or is it just this is what you want to do?
you start off with 2 objective cards. One's a personal objective and one's a corporate objective.
Okay.
At that time, as soon as you see the first alien, you have to pick one of those cards to do. But each of those cards would have an or on it. It would be you are the only survivor, or you make it back to Earth, for example. So you basically
Okay.
one of those things is going to cause you to win. I believe my corporate one, I can't remember the card exactly, but I think my corporate one was I had to get a larva back to Earth or something like that, or I had to be in an escape pod with a larva because it's the corporate thing. So the corporate wants one of these creatures to do. It could be that Jason's was he had to go send a signal to Earth because at the beginning of the game, there's always one of your crew members is dead. So not one of the players. You just put a chit saying one of the other people on the ship has died before you woke up. His was he had to go to the comm room, send a signal, get back to the hibernation area, and pick up that guy. And I think put him in a hibernation thing. He basically had to send a signal to Earth saying this person had died and basically get the body back to Earth so it could be buried or something like that. So that's what he had to do. But it will tell you on the little card that you need to have sent a signal and picked up the blue corpse and hibernate it and get back to Earth or something like that. So it will specifically say what you need to do. But it's not like a checklist when it's not like make sure the engines are repaired, make sure that it's going to Earth. It is literally You need to get back to Earth. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like I'm assuming it's set up to where, pretty much in every time you play it, like the engines are going to be a focus. The escape pods are going to be a focus. So everyone's just trying to work towards that. And it also sounds like you have some flexibility of you could shift strategies in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, so if it's an either or, get back to Earth or be the sole survivor. If you're seeing that it's not looking good, you could you could switch. So it sounds pretty cool. I mean, I as far as thematic, I mean, I enjoyed the movies. I'm not a super huge fan of them, but I'm sure that probably lends to the enjoyability for sure. But yeah, I definitely would play it because it sounds interesting enough to. What is that? Oh, an alien. I had to look at first. I'm like, has he got a hair dryer? I'm like, what's he got?
It's a USB alien that you plug it into your USB, and every once in a while the jaws shoot out. So
Wasteful.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen nothing but good things about it, but I tempered that with, I'm assuming the people that are buying it are Alien fans or Kickstarter backers. So I take some of that with a grain of salt when they talk about how great it is.
Yeah, and again, I didn't buy it on Kickstarter, but quite often my local game store, they do the game store Kickstarter, so I pre-ordered it from them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have the Kickstarter edition. I just have the retail edition from the initial Kickstarter.
Gotcha. Well, good. I mean, it sounds like it's enjoyable. So I definitely would. I like semi co-op games, so I would suffer through the theme to get it played. All right, very good. Well, my first bite is a game that Graham and I played. We played it as part of our wargaming segments, but it's also one that a lot of people within the mainstream part of the hobby that aren't quote unquote war gamers have played, and they seem to enjoy. And it's kind of made, it's kind of bridged that gap a little bit between between wargaming and the hobby side of it. And that game is The Shores of Tripoli. Now, I'm going to give a pretty high level overview of it, because if you want to know more about it in detail and how it works and little nuances, stuff like that, I would encourage you to check out the wargaming video that we'll have up on YouTube. It's not out yet. I think it's episode number 3. So I'm not sure exactly when that'll go up, but that'll give you a lot more information about the game.
Yeah, it should go up but if you're watching this or listening to this on the day that this goes live, it will be that following Friday that it goes up.
Okay. So by the time this drops, maybe it'll be up within a week. Yeah. So yeah. So The Shores of Tripoli is it's a war game. It's a light war game. It plays 2 players. You can play it solo, but we never played it solo. So 2-player game, pretty lightweight, a little above a 2, and it's going to play in about an hour. It's put out by Fort Circle Games. So this is a game about the American war with what we would call in America the Barbary pirates, the Tripolitans, the Berbers. Is it Berbers? No, not Berbers. I think they're just Barbary. Whatever. It's the Barbary coast along North Africa. So this was post-American Revolution, early American history as far as a country, and we are out there. We're on our own. The British government's not supporting us anymore. They're not protecting our navy. So it's up to us to fend off these pirates who really, they're just trying to ransom. They're trying to capture ships, ransom ships, get money, and that's what this game covers. This is I would consider it to be a card-driven game. It is it's a hand management game, and there's some dice rolling in it, but it does play kind of asymmetrical. So if you are the Americans, you are trying to blockade these different ports along the Barbary coast. You're trying to prevent their ships from coming out and raiding the merchants, or you also have the option of attacking their ships while they're in port, bombarding their forts to reduce their infantry strength. Because as the Americans, you're going to have one of two choices to win the game. You're either going to bombard the port of Tripoli and then invade and take over the fort, or you can march some troops across land, taking out 2 or 3 forts along the way, and then assault Tripoli that way. Either way, you're trying to take over the port of Tripoli. And if you're the Tripolitans, who's the main focus on the pirate side, you're just trying to either do one of two things. You can either destroy 4 of the American ships, which is not as easy as it sounds, or you are trying to gather 12 coins to basically represent that you have bled the American coffers dry. You're making this war too expensive. You're ransoming off merchant ships, and they just give up and basically make peace with you and pay tributes. How are you going to do this for either side? Well, you are going to use cards. Both sides are going to have a couple of core event cards that are always going to be out in front of them that they can play at any time or on their turns. And then each person is going to draw a hand of cards at the beginning of the year. And I think you're going to play over the course of 5 years in this game. So you're going to draw, I think you draw 8, keep 6, and then you're going to determine how you're going to use these cards. You can use them for the events. There's unique events, which if you play it, it'll get discarded out of the game. You can just play it for the event, and it goes into your discard pile to be reshuffled. And they are going to do things like allow you to move extra ships instead of the normal amount of ships. It'll allow you to bring more ships onto the board. It will bring in your Swedish allies if you're the Americans. But your choice is going to be play a card for the event, or you can discard a card for either side, you can discard a card to build more ships. As the American, you can build gunboats. As the Tripolitans, you can build corsairs, but you have to discard cards to do it. So there's that hand management. Do I want to play it for the event? Do I want to discard it to build more ships? For the Americans, you can discard a card to just move ships. So again, it's always that push and pull of what's more important, the event, the card play, building ships, moving ships, because the Americans are going to be stretched thin. You're trying to there's 4 different ports that you have to try to cover. And as a Tripolitans, you're a little more dependent upon, I think, what the actions or what the events are, because those events are going to put out your allies, which will allow you to do raids, versus discarding it just to build more corsairs. We only played it once. I played the Americans, Graham played the Tripolitans. I think both sides, well, they definitely both played differently. I would like to play it again just to kind of see. I think when we played it, neither one of us had gone through the actual deck of cards to see like what was it going to be in our event decks. So now knowing a little bit more what cards are in there and maybe how they chain together would be better. So I would play it again. I definitely would want to play the American side again. I would like to try the Tripolitan side, but I think it's one of those games where if you want a nice light game that has some conflict, I mean, you're definitely going to be battling back and forth. I mean, it is a war game, but it's a pretty simple game. I mean, there's not, the rules are pretty straightforward. There's only so many, but maybe 3 or 4 choices on your turn that you're going to do. The cards are easy to understand. They're very straightforward. There wasn't a whole lot of checking the rules for information. So I did enjoy it, and I think it's one that you could probably definitely introduce to non-war gamers, and they would, if they played Euro games that have any sort of player interaction where you're kind of in your face. I mean, they're gonna get this game, and I don't think they're gonna feel like they're being beat up on like a one-sided way. Like sometimes you play games that it feels like everyone's just piling on you. This being a 2-player game, going in, there's going to be some conflict, but the dice rolling is really simple. I mean, it's you hit on 6s or you hit on 5s and 6s. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So I enjoyed it. Check it out. That is The Shores of Tripoli by Fort Circle Games. Anything else to add to that for you?
Yeah, again, we'd go much more in depth in our wargaming episode, but again, from someone that's not a wargamer, I enjoyed this one as well. I thought it was very approachable because it is a fairly simple game, and it doesn't feel like, it feels more Euro-y than kind of a dudes on a map type thing. So there definitely is about war, and definitely feels kind of like a war game because I'm battling against, but I don't need to worry about killing off Dean's people, and he doesn't, but he does want to do that to me. I'm just worried about getting the coins. If I happen to kill a ship, that's great, but it's very difficult to kill a ship. So I definitely like the asymmetry to what the two sides are doing.
Yeah, and it's one where the game board itself, if you think of, a lot of people think of a war game, they think of like, hexes and stuff like that. This literally has what, 5 or 6
Something like that. Yeah.
spaces that you're going to ever be moving anything to. So it's very simple. It's pretty abstracted out, but it looks really nice too. I mean, it's a good quality game. So check it out, The Shores of Tripoli.
Yeah. So my game that I'm going to talk about is one called Venice. But the second one I'm talking about is called Venice. This is put out. I had not heard this game until I needed a game to fill up my basket, so I got free shipping. This is from Brain Crack Games and designed by Andrei Novak and David Surtsey. So when I kind of saw that is David Surtsey and it was Venice, which is where my wife's family's from, I figured, give it a shot. She might like this because it's all about being gondoliers in the canals of Venice. So the game board is the canals of Venice, a lot more perpendicular and parallel than I remember the canals being in Venice. And everybody has 2 gondolas. There are certain docking areas which your gondolas are, and you're basically going to be moving from dock to dock. And in each dock, there's going to be a building that's going to be associated with that. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to take all the buildings, shuffle them all up, and place them on the board. You have one gondolier, and you have a bunch of assistants. So on your turn, you're going to move the gondolier from one gondola to the other. So that's mandatory. You have to move it from one to the other, unless you pay 3 coins. Then you can keep the gondolier in the same gondola. So you move it, and then you have to move your gondola. The first movement you do is going to be free because each canal is going to cost a number of coins to go down it. So the first movement you do is going to be free. Each one after that, you have to pay coins for. Wherever you end up, you're going to place one of your assistants there. If you already have an assistant, you're going to move it up on its track. Each building has position for 4 spaces on its track. So of course, when you first put your assistant there, he's going to be on the most basic action that's going to be available. Each time you end up at that location, you're going to advance him 1 spot. So hopefully he'll get to the very last spot, which is going to give you a lot of benefits. You get the benefits when you pass a building. So if I decide to move 2 spots and I pass one building in between, if my assistant's on that building that I pass, he activates. And he's going to activate whatever position he's in, and he can do anything below it as well. So if he's in the 4th position, he could technically take like 4 different actions. Those actions are going to be, usually the basic one is getting a resource. You get, I think there's 3 resources in the game, and almost every building's basic action is to get one of those 3 resources. So you activate them, and if you get a resource, you put it on your ship. Your ship can only hold 5 goods, because the point of the game is you have mission cards, and the mission cards will be get these 3 goods, so 2 gray and a yellow, to the hospital. So you want to be using your assistants to load stuff onto your ship so you can get to the hospital so you can fulfill your mission. Some of the other actions are going to be like get intrigue, which is a bad thing. Get special cards. So there's special cards you can draw into your hand that you can play at the beginning of your turn, which is going to give you usually some special ability just for that turn. It could be exchange goods, trade in one good to get another good type of thing. So you can kind of manipulate the things on your board. The one thing that no one liked around the table was if you pass someone else in the canal. So let's say Dean is docked at the hospital and I pass the hospital. Dean and I both have a decision to make. You have 2 tracks on your player board. One is called scrolls, and you generally need a scroll to do a delivery. So if I want to deliver to the library, it will say it's going to cost you 1 scroll and these 3 goods. So you can either give up a scroll when you pass each other, or you can gain intrigue. There's kind of nothing Intrigue doesn't get you anything. If I have more intrigue, it doesn't give me any special ability. If I get intrigue, it's not going to get me any points. If I have intrigue, it doesn't do anything for me. I have a way to get rid of intrigue by going to the hospital. And I believe if you go to the Senate, you can give other people intrigue. But function-wise in the game, it doesn't mean anything. And the reason why people didn't like this is because at the end of the game, whoever has the most intrigue is automatically out of the game. You cannot win if you have the most intrigue. So you have the option when you pass someone else in the canal to either lose a scroll or gain intrigue. And that felt very, it didn't feel right for this intrigue. Because there are ways you can get rid of intrigue. You can either go to the hospital, which you can cure intrigue. You could, at the end of the game, you can basically buy off your intrigue. For every, I think it's every 2 scrolls or every 4 coins, you get rid of an intrigue. You can only ever have a maximum of 9 intrigue anyway. So no one had a problem getting rid of all their intrigue. So at the end of the game, we all had 0 intrigue. And at the very beginning of the game, we decided I was going to be first player. Well, of all the people that have the most intrigue, if they're all tied, then you just go in player order. The last person in player order is the person who's out. So we got to the last round of the game because there's going to be an end of game trigger. Usually when someone has completed so many missions, that will trigger the end of the game. And then you count down for 2 more turns. I triggered the end of the game and it was like, well, Jason, we're all going to have zero intrigue at the end of the game because we all had very easy ways to get rid of intrigue. You're last player. You can't win. So what's the point of playing the last 2 rounds for you? It just felt kind of weird for that because he didn't get any bonus during the game for having intrigue. It doesn't give you any advantage to have any intrigue in the game. You don't get a discount for buying stuff. You can't do anything with that intrigue. A lot of other games that have this, it's a push and pull. Do I take more intrigue to get this bonus? Are there ways for me to get rid of? This is no, you just kind of get intrigued during the game through no fault of your own. And then you can get rid of it. And if you don't, you lose. No one understood the point of this. And it really left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. Even when Lella was talking about playing a game yesterday, I said, oh, do you want to try Venice again? She's like, no, I really dislike that the person who has the most intrigue loses. We've played games that had it before, but all those other games, you were making decisions on taking that negative thing because you were getting a bonus for it. This, because you got no bonus, it just felt like a tacked on thing for no reason. The only thing is if you pass someone in a canal, so maybe you're taking a slightly shorter route, you're getting intrigue. But you got it when you passed someone, not when you ended up at the same spot. And it, like I said, I'm harping on this because this really felt like it didn't belong in this game. Like there was no gameplay reason for having this intrigue in the game. There was never any actions you took that said, if you can trade intrigue for this. There was never any cards you'd say that said, if you're above 5 intrigue, you can do this, really massive thing. It was just, you gain intrigue. There's ways to get rid of it. And if you have the most at the end of the game, you've lost. Okay. So I just spend my game not trying to get intrigue. Fine. It just, like I said, the rest of the game was fairly basic. It is a pick up and deliver. Pick up the different colored goods, deliver them to where you need to, then get a new mission. But that intrigue thing was just, it kind of put a bad spin on this game for everyone. Combined that with they were trying to make a certain size of board and box, I assume, and the board is too small for the components. And some of the components, again, you're putting your gondolier in these little plastic boats. They look really nice. Gondolier looks really nice. Your boats are nice and plastic. They look like gondolas. They're top heavy. Every time you have to move them, people are either knocking their gondolier out or knocking their goods off the boat. The canals are wide enough for one gondola, but quite often you have multiple gondolas all at the same spot. So you're kind of having to stack all these things around. The little building things that say what you do, you put your workers on there, but the workers cover up the actions that you're there. So you're kind of having to move all of your people to the very edges of these these action squares, everything needed to be slightly bigger or slightly smaller. Like if you're going to keep the board and the buildings the same size, and everything, like your gondoliers needed to be smaller, your assistants needed to be smaller. So there were some production issues with the game, and that intrigue I really, really disliked. It went from a game that I would say is enjoyable, worth playing, to one that I would say almost don't play with it, because it doesn't add anything to the game and is just punishing for one person who, for no benefit, they've lost the game. So it's kind of a mixed review, probably more negative than, I'm not sure. I need to play it again. I need to play it a couple more times to see how this works out. At 4 players, so we played at 3 players. At 4 players, the board size doesn't change, but I don't think you're going to be able to move without getting intrigue, because there's going to be so many gondolas on the board that it's going to be almost impossible to get anywhere without getting intrigue. And again, for no benefit. There's no reason why you would voluntarily take intrigue, because it doesn't get you anything. You're just going to get it because you could be at a port and someone just happens to pass you. And unless you have scrolls to give up, but you need scrolls to make your deliveries, which is the main way you're going to be getting points, you're going to have to take intrigue. Why? Because you just happen to be there. So that piece really sat poorly with me, as you could probably tell. So that is a game called Venice from Brain Crack Games.
So do you think thematically the intrigue is representing, like, they're passing you, so they're seeing what's on your gondola, and maybe you're smuggling stuff, or you've got contraband, and so that
for me would
know.
make more sense if I docked at the same place you did.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I would gossip, and whatever, and or you would pull up beside me, kind of look at my boat or whatever else. That makes sense. And that would also mean that I'm making a decision to dock at the same place you are, because I want to activate, or I want to increase my assistant there. Because the only way you can step up your assistant is by docking at the place. So if I docked where you are, I'm making a conscious decision to get intrigue, but the bonus is to make my guy stronger. That makes sense. Me passing you on the aisle and the canals, that doesn't make sense to get intrigue, because I'm not getting any bonus for passing you. I still have to pay the canal price. I just need to get to position B that just happens to be past you. So, like I said, if I made a conscious decision to get intrigue to increase my worker, that makes 100%. And I would say that works well. That makes sense. The way it's implemented in the game doesn't make any sense. With no bonus for getting intrigue, it just doesn't work.
Are you guys sure you're playing the game correctly?
Again, this is first bite. I've only played it once.
I mean, because I could see where, I could see that. So because you got the different cubes, the different goods or whatever, I could see where if there was, say, a black cube that represented something, illegal.
Yeah.
And that if you had that on your gondola and you pass somebody, you're running the risk of, yeah, I get a lot of reward for this cube, but if I pass them, they see it, so now I take intrigue.
Yeah.
But if you were, but just passing someone, so or you could do it the other way, where if the opponent or if the person that you're passing has something illicit, they should get the intrigue that if you saw it versus you getting. I don't know. I'm scrolling through the forums here, and I haven't seen a whole lot of stuff. I do see where there's been a lot of complaining about the board, and that they're talking about maybe doing a new board for it.
Right.
I don't know how that's going to help anyone that already owns the game, because I doubt if they're just going to mail them to every Kickstarter backer. But yeah, it sounds interesting, but it almost sounds like there's something missing as far as the explanation of the rules.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's just, I don't know, maybe, David Terzi's generally a pretty good designer.
Yeah.
But
so even if you look at the description on Board Game Geek, it says space is limited on the city's canals. However, each time you pass another merchant's boat, gossip will spread, raising your suspicion level with the Inquisition. It says lower your suspicion with visits and donations to the church or academic institutions, which is some of the buildings on the board. You can go or throw caution to the wind and engage in unsavory activities for money information. No, that intrigue doesn't get you anything. That isn't true. That description of your intrigue, there's no position that I remember that you can go on the board that says get rid of an intrigue to get this bonus.
So if you are passing someone on the canals, the only benefit you're really getting is you may get to a location before someone else to get rid of your goods, or does it even matter if you get to a location?
It doesn't matter whether you get to a location first or not.
You don't get paid anything more for your goods if you're the first one there.
No.
Or you get a bonus for being the first one there.
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
The only benefit would be is if I'm trying to get here and I'm here and you're in the middle here. So I'd have to pass you to get to the location. If it's my first movement, I don't have to pay the coins on the canal.
Okay.
So if I have to go up and around, I'd have to pay for that canal, and that canal, as opposed to just going across and just paying for where you are, that canal. That's the only benefit I could see for getting intrigue. But again, with 4 players and gondolas being on the majority of, especially the main canals, it'd be almost impossible to avoid other people.
All right.
So, like I said, it doesn't feel right. It may require a different play. I'm going to reread the rules again, but it kind of highlights you only get intrigue when you pass, not when you dock.
It almost sounds like they so they wanted to design a pick up and deliver style game, and then they felt like, we just need to do something, something just a little bit more to make it, whatever, to give it a little more oomph, but maybe it didn't quite work out that way. So you're talking about the player order and where Jason was in fourth, he was player 4 or in fourth, whatever.
But he was third, but yeah, he was the last player.
So does that ever change?
No.
So if you're the third player, you're always going to be the player 3.
Yes. So you want to become first player. Like at the very beginning of the game, you volunteer to be first player, because that way, if you're ever going to tie for the most intrigue, you're not going to lose.
And there's no way to steal.
No, because the only thing first player is used for is turns. Right. So whoever triggers the end of the game, the first player's turn, they'll move the marker onto, okay, we're now in the penultimate round. And then when it's their turn again, they move it to final round. So that's the only thing first player is for, is just to make sure everybody gets the same number of turns.
That seems kind of, I could see where if you could steal the first player marker, that would make sense. But just to have it arbitrarily, that it may come back and bite you in the last round, because of the intrigue amount. But I don't know. I
believe if someone gets first player, and I think the next person gets maybe extra coins to start. Like I start with first player, you start with a coin, and then player 3 starts with 2 coins or something like that. There is a slight changing, but it's not enough. In my mind, it really doesn't make much difference.
You would think if you were farther, like if you're the third player, fourth player, and I'm sure coins are crucial, but it sounds like scrolls are crucial too to get rid of intrigue. Maybe they should give you scrolls instead.
Yeah. Like I said, I know you got extra stuff the further down the turn order you went, but at the end of the game, it really didn't matter how much you started with, because we were all at 0 intrigue. We all had no problem getting rid of our intrigue. And Jason, for his last turn, was like, well, maybe I could sail down here and give everyone intrigue. It's like, you can, but I have 4 coins left. You can't give me enough intrigue that I won't be able to pay off at the end of the game.
Right.
So it didn't matter what he did. And it was kind of anticlimactic, because Lella was far out ahead. She was like 10, 15 points ahead. I was in second and Jason was in third. And when you're looking at the end of game scoring, the only thing that mattered was Jason going to be able to pass me? So he's trying to figure out how to get more points. I'm like, but it doesn't matter though. Because even if you pass me, even if you pass Lella, let's say you get 30 points at the end of the game, you have the most intrigue. So you are automatically out. There's nothing you can do that would give enough intrigue to either Lala or I so that one of us is going to be eliminated, because both Lala and I had scrolls left over and we had coins left over. We could both pay off, I think, up to 4 intrigue. And we had 0 intrigue going into the final scoring anyway.
Right.
And we were just waiting for Jason to take his final turn. He's like, well, is there anything I can do to flip this? Is there any advantage for me going last? Is there any advantage for me to go last, because I'm going to be last in tiebreakers, to try and force you to, is there any advantage for it? And we're like, if I had finished the game with no coins and no scrolls, then maybe, because there is one spot on the board you can go to trigger to give other people intrigue. But it's only one. So you'd have to hope that you're either tied with someone. Yeah, the only option for the last player would be hopefully that you were tied at the end of the game and they've already taken their turn, and somehow you can give them, you can go to the, I think it's the Senate, you can go to the Senate and you have a worker there that you can activate that would give the other tied person an extra intrigue. But that's like,
right,
the likelihood of being able to do that, and likelihood that they've ended the game with no scrolls and no money to be able to pay off their intrigue is like, very, very, very slim chance.
Yeah, it almost sounds like instead of being able just to pay everything off at the end of the game, they could have limited that to in game.
Yes.
And then people just weren't going to stockpile scrolls and coins, that you had to make a choice of, well, no, I need to do this before the end game happens, or I'm going to be really screwed.
Yeah. And so I will say at the end of the game, Jason had, I think, eight intrigue. Lel and I had 0. But he'd been stockpiling coins so he could pay off of all his intrigue. So you go, oh, okay, so intrigue obviously is connected to the coins. Who cares? He was still 5 or 10 points behind me on the score track anyway.
All right.
So all he was doing was getting the coins to pay off his intrigue, but he wasn't getting any points for it. Lella had 0 intrigue. She had, I think, 10 coins left over. She had a couple scrolls and she had the most points. So obviously that intrigue is not a balancing thing. It's just like a punishing thing for no reason. Anyway.
Well, it sounds to me like Lella had a home field advantage, and she knows the inner workings of those canals from her childhood days of swimming in those pristine waters of Venice. So, all right, well, I mean, maybe your thoughts will change later on, but
they might.
That was Venice by Brain Crack Games, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up our first bite segment. And we are going to do a top 5 list. Now, this top 5 list, as I wrote it, was top 5 games introduced to us by others. So these are games, this is how I viewed it. These were going to be games where either I had never heard of it, I had never given it the time of day, never really researched it, wasn't even interested in the game before it was introduced to me. Which, as I was making my list, did eliminate. There were a lot of games were like, oh yeah, well, so-and-so brought that in, but I knew about the game, or I was always interested in the game. So that's kind of how I approached it.
So because if I didn't restrict it, so what I did is I said, these are games that I've met people at a con or wherever, and they basically pulled a game out of their bag and said, let's play this. MogCon, we tend to set up the games we're going to play ahead of time. So we know what other people are bringing. We know about the games, which is why no MogCon game is on my list.
Okay.
Because I felt that going into a MogCon, I knew what I was going to play. And I wanted to say, no, this is times when I've met whomever at a con and just sat down with them and said, what do you want to play? And they went, I just got this new game. Let's play this. I've never heard of this game before. Sure, let's go ahead. So my list is, they're all con related games that I had no knowledge of the game, had no plans to play the game. I just happened to sit down with someone and they said, let's play this game. So that's my top 5.
And didn't you say they were going to be games that were not introduced to you by myself? Is that what you said?
Yes. And again, there was probably one is my honorable mention, that I was kind of debating whether to put on the list or not, and that's Fox in the Forest. Because
Mhm.
Fox in the Forest wasn't at a MogCon, it was at Grand Con, I think it was.
Right.
And you said, okay, let's play this game. That could have been on my list, but I decided not to do it. I tried to go more for literally being on a con floor and just stopping by someone's table or running into someone and just sitting down and playing a game with them. So
Okay. All right. Very good. So that's kind of how we were approaching this list. So I'll go first. So my number 5 is a game. It was introduced to me by Graham, but it's a game that we've only played.
only number 5.
Yeah.
Expect mine to be 1 and 2 on your list.
Well, you didn't even put any of mine on yours, so but it's a game we've only played on Tabletopia. We played it a few times, but the game is Cinque Terre or Cinque Terre. I don't know how you pronounce it. But so this is a game that well, because it's out of print, I never owned it, never even looked at it. I'd heard people talk about it, but it's one of those where I just didn't really pursue it or anything like that. So we had a chance to play it, and I really enjoy this game. This is a set collection, contract fulfilling style of game that you are gathering all this different produce, and you are trying to fulfill these. Are they? I guess they're just grocery orders. They're not really recipes.
Yeah.
You're trying to fulfill these different grocery orders and then deliver them to the different towns, I suppose. So on the board, you've got different resources out laid out, just different colored cubes, and you're moving your little truck around, and your truck can only hold, I forget, I think 4 maybe pieces of produce, 4 or 5. And so you're picking up the produce, and this is, again, it's based off of, there's dice rolling in this game at the beginning of it's just rolled once at the beginning of the game, right?
Just at the
Yeah.
beginning of the game, yeah.
And it's going to set a dollar value for the produce as far as what you're going to be able to sell it for. But that's also going to fluctuate, or that's going to be based on the towns that you're taking it to. And some of the towns want specific produce. And so the dice or certain colors are going to match the cubes of the produce out there. So it's this whole game of collecting the produce, delivering it to the different towns. And then you have these contracts that basically you're going to say, if you deliver this, and this to this town, let's see, it's not an individual contract. So you're filling your player board. Like,
well, there's the 2 different things. There's the contract you're trying to fulfill, which will be
right.
Deliver this, and this. But you also have a player board that if you deliver cubes, each town will have a set number of cubes you need to deliver. Right. So you can also fill that up to get points.
Yeah. So I don't know. Anyways, it's a nice medium weight, a good family game. I think you could introduce it to anybody and they would understand it. And it doesn't outstay its welcome either. It's pretty much an hour game. If you have played it once, at least you're gonna be able to knock it out in 60 minutes. So anyways, that's Days of Wonder, isn't it? Or was that Days of Wonder?
I want to say Rio Grande.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking of Cargo Noir. So anyway, so that is Cinque Terre. Should have picked games I could pronounce. My number 5.
Okay, so my number 5 is a game I don't own, but it was introduced to me at a Gen Con. And again, this was hey, look at the game I just bought. Why don't we play this? This is one called Mental Blocks. This one kind of came out in 2019 from Hobby Japan and Pandasaurus Games, designed by Jonathan Gilmore and Micah Sawyer. This is a co-op puzzle game. So you have a bunch of these foam blocks, squares, triangles, rectangles, things like that, like wedges. And each person gets a card, and the card will show one side of the structure you're trying to make. So I may see a gray block with a blue triangle with a yellow square, but that yellow square could be a long rectangle. So I don't know which way it goes. I don't know whether one block is kind of partially covering it or what. But Dean, who's sitting opposite side of the table, he's also going to have a card that's going to show him his side of the block. And it's timed. So we are trying to work together to say, well, Dean might put the blocks and say, this is what I see. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't work for me because I can see the light blue block. Like I can physically see it, but my card says I can't see that block. So how do we block it so you can see it, but I can't? So maybe this piece goes here. So again, we're trying to work together to figure out to make the series of blocks match what we see from our side. It's very interesting. You can play it. That's like the basic game. There's like family modes to it. So the family mode would be slightly easier, and that's the version I played because we still found it difficult as the higher up we went. You can also introduce like a trader mechanism to the board, in which they get a card that shows them all aspects. They get the card that shows them exactly what it's supposed to look like, and they're trying to manipulate it so they don't get that down there. So you're not trying to be too obvious that you're the trader, but you also want to slightly manipulate it so it's not correct. It's very intriguing. I never bought the game because I didn't think Lella was going to like it. She doesn't like these type of spatial puzzle type games, and you have to enjoy spatial puzzles. You have to kind of get it into your head. Okay, that's what the physical pieces look like, but I'm trying to make them look like my card. And how am I going to do that? And working together with other people, there could be times when someone can't touch a certain color block, or they can't talk, or things like that, which will add more wrinkles to trying to do it. I found it intriguing. Like I said, this game is come and gone. It was released at Gen Con, and I saw it in the local game store, and I've never heard anybody talk about it. But I enjoyed my plays. I think you have to get the right group of people to do it and in the right time frame for the style of game. But if you have friends that enjoy this type of abstract spatial puzzle, this may be one you want to check out. So that is my number 5, Mental Blocks from Pandasaurus Games.
I remember you talking about that game after you had played it, and it sounded interesting because initially I was, when you were describing it way back, not way back, it's a year or so. I was intrigued by the idea that you could just hide, you could hide a block or knock a block in the floor or whatever, and to sabotage kind of the opponent. So sounded interesting, but again, I mean, like you said, no one's really talking about it anymore. So, all right, my number 4 is a game that was introduced to me by a friend of mine at my regional con in Cincinnati, and that is his name was Mark, and he was actually running a few games for Plan B Games, I think. Glenn Drover's company. And I played like 3 different games that he brought. He's like, oh, you should check these games out. I played 3. This is the one that stood out to me. This is the one that I went out and purchased. And this is one that is just such a great family game. And that is Extraordinary Adventure Pirates. Extraordinary Adventure Pirates is it's a pretty fast racing game. It's set in the Caribbean. You have these different pirate ships on these 3 different tracks, and it is a combination of set collection, because you're trying to gather these cubes, these crates of goods and treasure. And when you get a certain combination of them, you can turn them in for these scoring cards. So you're trying to race to get to these cubes before other people. And a lot of the cubes are, so you have these paths which you can move your ship along, and then you have these little side junkets off of the paths that go to these little islands, and the islands are where these crates are at. And so it's that choice of, well, do I want to grab that crate? Do I need it? Can I use it? Or do I want to grab it because I definitely think Amy's trying to get that crate based off of the crates that she has in front of her. If she gets this one, she can get this scoring token. So it's a combination of that. It's a combination also of when you stop at these islands, you can draw more cards into your hand or into your deck, because this is also a deck building game at the same time. Everyone starts out with the same cards in their base hand. And these cards some of them are going to have special actions that allow you to do certain things. Some of them are going to give you extra movement on a particular color path. And then some of them are just going to be basic movement points. Because on your turn, you're using these cards to determine, am I moving 2 spaces, 3 spaces, and you can split them up along the different paths along your different pirate ships, or you can do them all on one path and move it that way. The ones that give you the bonus movement are generally specific to, you get 2 extra movements on the black path or on the red course. So you're using these islands that you're stopping at to either grab crates, add additional cards into your deck, and then I believe when you turn in the crates and get the scoring token, you also get to add cards in. I may be slightly off on that. It's been a while, but it's just it's got some take that to it, because as you're moving your ships, each player has, I believe, 4 meeple pirates that they have put out at the beginning of the game, and they've just chosen where they want to put them. I'm going to put one here, I'm going to put one here on this island, that island. And over the course of the game, you can determine, do you want to stop at that island? Because you can capture other people's pirates. And if at the end of the game, they are worth points to you. I'm trying to think if you get points for your opponent's pirates or if you just get points for the ones that are left out on the board. Either way, they're worth points. So that there's some choices to be made. There is some strategy. Do you want to race ahead? Like if I'm looking at the how many points I have, and I can see, oh, Amy, she could probably get 1 or 2 more contracts, but if I race ahead to the end, she won't get any of those. She won't have time to turn them in. It's just a fun. I mean, I've played it with the family. I've played it at a con. It's not a serious game. I mean, it's just a fun little, haha, I beat you here, or I captured your pirate, or if you not raced ahead, man, I just needed one more turn. One more turn, I could have fulfilled this contract. I wasn't expecting anything out of this game. I remember when it first came out, and I thought, okay, whatever. I thought, man, that's a really bad choice of a title, because it just was really long. But man, I've enjoyed it. It's one of those few ones that have been introduced to me where I've actually gone out and purchased it. I mean, a lot of times people introduce you to a game, you're like, yeah, it was fun. I don't need to own it. But this is one where I actually went out and found it. So that is Extraordinary Adventure Pirates.
Yeah, I do want to try this one because I know you've talked about it quite a bit. I remember seeing the cover, and one of the main reasons why I never ended up buying it is I didn't, until you started talking about it, until I started looking into it, I didn't realize just how light a game it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested to play your copy.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. It's not going to be for everybody, but it's a great family game.
So my number 4 is, I think, the only one from my list. No, actually, there's another one that I thought it might appear on Dean's list as well. This is called Let's Make a Bus Route. Introduced down at, I think this is Dice Tower Con. Mm-hmm. Again, this was this game is the big buzz. It's from Sashi and Sashi. And I don't know whether there is I don't think anybody's reprinted over here, so you have to basically pay import prices, which is the main reason why I don't have this game, because it was stupidly expensive for what it was. But this is a flip and write game. And the reason why this made my list over a lot of the other kind of roll and write flip and writes is because I don't see very many games in which everyone is playing on the same board. So there is a central map of Kyoto, and there, with all the streets on it, and everybody is responsible for their own bus. So everybody has a different color marker, and everybody has a different player board. And what's going to happen is you're going to flip over one of the cards. It will show you a color, blue, for example. So I look at my player board and we'll say, when blue is turned up, you do like an L shape. That's what you have to draw. You have to draw an L shape. But on Dean's board, the blue may be straight. And on Lella's board, it could be like a C or something like that. So everybody's blue is different. And you are all doing your own bus routes on the main board. So, Dean's going to be drawing his own thing. He's not going to be going off of mine. He's drawing his own color on the board. But if he draws the same row that I'm currently or have already drawn, he causes what's called traffic. So you want to avoid the traffic. on the board, there's going to be tourists, old people, and sightseers or something like that. I forget what there's 3 different types of people and a couple different types of things you can pass. Like you could pass a tourist attraction. So the tourists, you want your bus to pass a tourist and a tourist attraction because that's what they want to go see. It could be that you're picking up an elderly person and they need to get, I forget what they want to go to, a hospital, for example. So your bus route, you want to pass an elderly person and you also want to make sure you pass a hospital. It's very simple because it is a roll and write, but I was just really intrigued by that central board, how everyone is drawing on the same area. And the main reason why I didn't buy this game is because it's important, and I didn't feel this roll and write was worth whatever $80 that they wanted for it. So I was happy that someone else bought it and got to play his copy. But it was very enjoyable. This is one that next time I go to a con, I would definitely see whether they have this in there because I enjoy this roll and write. I just don't want to pay the high price for it. And again, I think I played it, and I think then Dean joined us for the next game of this. So like I said, it was one that out of left field that I just really enjoyed. So that is Let's Make a Bus Route by Sashi and Sashi. Although technically the designer is Sashi and the publishing company is Sashi and Sashi. So I'm not sure which Sashi designed this.
Yeah, this is one I don't remember scrolling past it on my games played list. I mean, it probably was in there. Just didn't stand out to me. I enjoyed the game. I don't love it. I don't think I enjoyed it nearly as much as you, and definitely not as much as Mike Parkinson enjoyed it. It's fine. I mean, I would play it again. And to me, the saving grace to it is it's short.
Yeah.
It's simple. I mean, I think we've talked about this one other time for a flip and right or a roll and right style game. What I do enjoy about it is that you're all using the same board. So there's no means of cheating.
Yeah.
Which I think sometimes in roll and write games is like, really? Did you really roll that or check that off? So anyways, that's my take on it. So my number three is actually a game that was introduced to us at MogCon, but I don't think this was the very first MogCon, and I don't think we put as much thought into the games that were going to get played because I don't remember us discussing saying, hey, we want to play this game. Eric just brought it, I think, and introduced it to us, and that is London Second Edition. So London Second Edition. Now this is so it's second edition. So obviously there was a first edition. So Martin Wallace game, but they may have similarities as far as how the game plays, but they look nothing alike. The first edition was a game board and had little, meeples out there, wooden bits or whatever. And this one is strictly a card game. It's a card game. There is a board to it where you're putting the kind of the market out there, but this is would you consider it a tableau builder? I don't know if it's a tableau builder. You're
or an engine builder because you lay them out, you run the engine, and then the cards are gone.
Yeah, so it's kind of an action queue type game where you're buying these cards or drafting these cards, and you're putting them out in front of you from left to right across. And the idea is that you're building your little section of London. But within this game, there's doing a couple of things unique. I mean, there's a whole idea of you choose when you want to run this engine, and you can either you can build a short action queue and possibly run it more times because it's shorter, or you can build a longer action queue which is going to have more things trigger off. But every time you trigger them off, either some of the cards are going to flip because they're going to be one-time sort of use cards, and some of the cards are going to generate poverty for you. Is it poverty? Pollution every time that you run it. So running it multiple times may not be as good because you're going to be generating more pollution. So maybe having a longer action queue is better, but then again, maybe you're not generating as much coins because then some cards are going to give you coins as you run it. It's just, again, it's one of those where it's kind of that choice of how do I want to manage the cards that I have, because there's always, most of the cards give you something good or bad. Some of them give you both. Some of them give you just one or the other. So I enjoy that aspect of it. I also enjoy the aspect that there, you have the north side of the river, the south side of the river. So you have these kind of, I'm not sure what the actual what they call the cards. You have these bigger cards that kind of say, okay, this is
boroughs.
Yeah, the boroughs. So it's going to give you this benefit when you purchase it, and it's on the north side, it's on the south side, and it's gonna have an effect on the gameplay because you're going to have to manage again the effects of those cards. And I think one of the I don't know which part I enjoy more, if it's the choosing of when you can run that action queue, and determining it's the placement of where you're going to put the card. I mean, generally you're always going to build it to the right, but it's that one where if I run it now, it's going to flip and I'm going to lose that card. And there's that whole poverty, or I'm sorry, the pollution portion of it at the end of the game. So at the end of the game, when you go to do your final scoring, you're going to look to see who has the least amount of poverty, pollution, the least amount of pollution. And let's say Graham has 15. So then the other opponents are going to, we're going to get to subtract the 15 that you have, and whatever we have remaining, there's this kind of sliding track of you're going to get penalized this many. It's the victory points, I think, isn't it? Yeah. And is it the person? It doesn't automatically eliminate the person who has the most.
No, but
it's punishing.
It is punishing. So like if after everybody subtracts, like again, if I get 15, I'm down to 0 pollution. So I lose 0 points. If Dean has like 1 to 3, he loses like 1 point. But then if you have 3 to 5, you may lose like 5 points. And then it escalates from there. So you definitely do not at the end of the game want to have lots more than everyone else, because it will be punishing at the end of the game.
Yeah. And you also don't want to have a lot of debt, because the debt that you can acquire during the game, you can get it because you may need it, but if you don't pay it off, again, it's pretty punishing at the end of the game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this is a game where, I don't know if it's polarizing, but there are a lot of people that just hate this game, and there are a lot of people that love the game. I love it. I think why it was never on my radar initially is because I never played the original London, wasn't really that well versed in it. And this was one of the first games, I think, that Osprey Games, who is primarily known more for making books, this is one of the first games that they kind of came out when they joined the board game hobby publishing side. And it's a very nondescript box.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just basically blue and it says London across the front of it. And so it just wasn't on my radar. But man, I was really happy the first time we played it. I know you and I both, I think, went out and bought the game.
Yeah.
And we've played it as much as we could when we saw face to face back in the day when we were going to cons. I know we took it the next year to Dice Tower Con and played it just 2-player. So
yeah. Again, that would have been on my list, but I decided not to put any ModCon games on my list because
it's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, like Dean said, we both played the game and we both went home and bought our own copies of it. So that's definitely a plus for me.
Right.
So my number 3 is a small little game that, again, I played at Gen Con, I want to say. I forget where it was first introduced to me. I don't know why I like this game so much. I seem to be the only person that does seem to really enjoy this game. And this is called Flotsam Fight by Oink Games. I liked it so much that I actually got Dean to get me a copy of it because he found it in a store, because I could not find it up here in Canada. Dean happened to see it and he says, "Oh, yeah, I see Flotsam Fight. Do you want to pick it up for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, not." So he was able to get it, buy it for me, and he was able to get it to me. So Flotsam Fight it's a little card game. It plays 3 to 6 players. It's from Oink Games, and you are putting out numbers on the board, like little kind of semicircles, and depending on how many players, only certain semicircles are going to be used. So the first couple of rounds, people are putting their cards underneath these semicircles. But once you reach a point, of, let's say, you can only put under 5. You can only basically start 5 of these semicircles. Once you've reached that 5th, no one can start any more semicircles, which means you have to start playing on other people's cards. The idea is you're trying to get rid of all the cards in your hand, and you have to play them from low to high. So, and so you want to that, and that's essentially the game. You want to get rid of all your cards, and the first person to get rid of all your cards gets, first place, second, third place, and then no one else gets any points. Super, super simple. Of course, not all the cards are dealt out. And I forget, there are some placement restrictions, and I can't remember for the life of me what they are. But I just enjoyed it. It's one of these simple games that we played it once, then we played it again, and then I think we played it the next day. And then when I came home, I started looking to buy it. I could have bought it at, it was either Gen Con or Origins. I was introduced to this game. I could have bought it there, but because I was Canadian, you had to pay in American dollars, and you had to have an American PayPal account. They wouldn't take American. It was just a Canadian PayPal account. It was just, I couldn't get it there. So I had to wait for it in the store. And this one from Oink Games, this one never really seemed to be one of their top sellers. So my local game stores just didn't carry this one. So I enjoy it. A lot of people I played it with weren't too taken with it. But for whatever reason, this one just kind of struck a chord with me that I just enjoyed. I enjoyed the, when do I play my cards? If I have a lot of high cards, I kind of have to wait for other people to play, or do I jump a pile really high? So I'm going to restrict what other people can play on it. But I also have this really low card, but I need to get that low card out as well. So I like that kind of push and pull of, yes, you want to get out your cards, but there are some points that you want to stop other people from being able to play. So you may want to play a high card, hoping that if you play like a 70 and your next card is like a 71, you're hoping that if you play the 70, someone doesn't play an 80, which means you can't play your 71 on that pile anymore. So like I said, light, it's very quick. You're playing in, it says 30 minutes. I don't think I've ever played a game that lasts 30 minutes. The numbers will also tell you what piles you can play them on. So that's the other restriction. So all those semicircles are numbered 1 through whatever, 1 through 10. So if you have card 93, for example, 93 can only be played on pile 3. So if pile 3 isn't started, you will not be able to get rid of 93. So that's a further restriction. Some of the cards you can play on any pile. Some of them you can play on half the piles. So it's pretty good. So if you have card 93 in your hand, you want to kind of make sure that pile 3 is started. So like I said, super light game. It's weighted a 1 on Board Game Geek. Plays 2 to 6 players. This is my favorite Oink game. So I figured it had to be on my list because this came out of nowhere. Never heard of it. Someone just said, hey, let's try this. And we ended up playing 2 or 3 times in a row. First time I played it. So this is Flotsam Fight by Oink Games.
Yeah, I remember we played this at ModCon the one year. I guess it was the time I gave you the game. I do remember I enjoyed it. I don't remember loving it, and I don't remember if it was one where maybe we played it late at night. I'm not sure, but it was fun. So, all right. So my number 2 is a game that was introduced by Graham. And I don't know if you knew this or at the time or whatever. So this is a game that we played at Dice Tower Con. I think it was the first year that we met at Dice Tower Con, or met up at Dice Tower Con. And we played it 4-player. B played in it.
Bear Valley.
No. That would have been on. That should have been on your list. I introduced you guys to that game. I can't believe that's not on there. No, this is actually Grand Austria Hotel. So Grand Austria Hotel. So this came out in 2015, I believe. Yeah. And this is kind of what got me on the Simone Luciani kick and the Gigli. So I think 2015 was also the year that Voyages of Marco Polo came out. So I don't know if I owned Marco Polo at the time. Either way, this game wasn't really on my radar, and it's definitely the highest ranked game that'll be on the list for me as far as overall for BGG. So this is a game that, and we've talked about this game probably more times than most people want to hear, but this is So it has dice. It's not really a dice placement game because you're going to roll the dice at the beginning of the turn. You're going to put them out there on the board, and people are basically going to choose which one they want to use and then take one. So I don't even know if I'd call it a dice drafting game because you're not really doing anything with that game or with that dice afterwards or that die afterwards. So this game is about running a hotel. You are running the hotel. You are trying to get guests into your hotel. You're trying to put them into your rooms in the hotel. But before you can do that, you need to wine them and dine them and please them enough to where they're ready to go to bed. And so that's part of it. And you're using these dice that are out there on this board to do different actions. And the cool thing I like about this is I forget how many dice you're going to roll. It's probably based off player count. But let's say you're rolling 10 dice. And then so 10 six-sided die, you're then going to group them into whatever their numbers are. And the players are going to choose, okay, well, I really want to do this action that is, die value number 3, but there might only be 1 die in there. So why does that matter? Well, because the number of dice that are in those areas are going to determine kind of the power or the ability, how many, the effect of what that action is going to be. So while you may really want to do, the action that is associated with die value 3, it may not be beneficial to you. Or you may decide, well, I want to do this. And at the same time, I think Graham probably wants to do it after me. So I'm going to go, I want to get it done first, because every time you choose to do one of those actions, you're going to remove a die out of that pool as well, which is going to lessen the effect of it for the next person that chooses it. And I think that, to me, I think that's just a really cool concept. So besides using the dice for those abilities, and besides feeding your guests and giving them what they want, you also are hiring staff, and the staff are going to give you different bonuses for doing some of the different actions. They're going to give you, I think some of them also give you some bonuses as far as like the resources that you for the food and stuff like that. And they're pretty thematic. I mean, they have, the titles of what they do, and they kind of correspond to, to the bonuses that they give. And then the other thing about this, which was one of the first times I think that I'd really seen in a game, was you have the Emperor track. And in this game, you are trying to make sure that you're moving far enough up this Emperor track that when, I think it's 3 times during the game, when the Emperor comes to visit, that if you're not far enough along this track, you have displeased him, and there are some pretty punishing effects that go into play. And of course, you'll see these, that same mechanism re-implemented into one of the greatest games of all time, which it's the papal track, but I can't talk about it. So anyways, I know Graham and Lolo played this game quite a bit, especially 2-player. They think it's a great 2-player game, and I wish I got to play it more. But that is my number 2, Grand Austria Hotel.
And we just played 4-player Grand Austria Hotel on Friday.
Yeah, we did play 4-player Hotel on Friday.
It's the other thing I like is not only the dice strength, but with 4 players, you're going to be taking 2 dice around. So if I go first, I'm going to be taking the first and the last die, which means, yes, I got first pick, but I also get the leftover, which is always enjoyable. So turn order matters quite a bit too. So yeah, I love Grand Austria Hotel. I think it's a fantastic game. And 7 rounds, you're even in a 4-player game, you're done in like an hour and a half. Lela and I can bang out a 2-player game in 45 minutes. So it's a really good weight and really fun game. So my number 2 is, I think I should be hanging around Mike Parkinson more. He seems to introduce me to
it's just gonna be roll and rights. That's all you're gonna play.
This is another roll and write, and I would be surprised whether this is not on Dean's list. This is Welcome To. We played Let's Make a Bus Route, and we played Welcome To. Both that came out of Mike's bag.
Really? I don't remember him introducing me to this game.
No?
Nah.
No, he's the one who introduced me to the game.
Yeah, I mean, he probably did. I just don't remember it.
Yeah. So yeah, my number two is Welcome to. We've talked about this one quite a bit. It's probably my favorite roll and write. I think it works so smoothly. Everybody's one of the things that I like for roll and writes is when everybody's involved on everybody's turn. So this is, you're going to be turning over three cards, yeah, three cards, right? Or two cards. Forget whatever it is. It's three. And they're going to be different numbers and different. So you flip them over, so you have numbers and types of buildings. So you kind of have like a combo. So there's 6 cards that are grouped into 3 sets of 2. And you're going to be picking one of them. You're going to be marking it off on your board on your little neighborhoods because you have certain goals that you want to do. You want to have, neighborhoods that are like 2, 3, and 4 length that are all filled up. And of course, you're working from left to right, going from low to high. So if you put, number 60 as your first building, it's probably going to be tough to fill up that row. But where do you put those middling numbers? Do you move it more to one side or the other side? It's just an enjoyable game that everybody's involved with every round. It's not overly complicated. It's fairly easy to explain, but everybody's neighborhoods always end up completely different. Like you're never going to end the game go, oh, my neighborhood looks exactly like your neighborhood, because everybody's going to be picking different cards. Everybody wants to do different things. Someone might want to go after pools. Someone might want to go after large neighborhoods or small neighborhoods, or put up fences here or different things. There's like an advanced version of Welcome to where you can add, I think it's roundabouts and something else, or new businesses. They can add a little more complexity. They've now come out with a bunch of, I don't know whether they're expansions or alternate ways to play. Like there's the Halloween one, there's Welcome to Las Vegas. They've taken this same idea and kind of expanded it, that if you get tired of Welcome to, there's probably another variant that you will enjoy as well. But this one, again, as soon as I played it, I knew I had to get a copy of it, and it's worked well. And just what everybody I've introduced it to, it's just, like I said, my favorite flip and write game. That is Welcome to.
Yeah, that's that's another good one. I honestly didn't remember that it was introduced to me by Mike. But yeah, we've talked about it a lot. It's a great flip and right, roll and right style game. So no need to belabor the point. All right. So any guess what my number one would be?
Who
it's not Welcome to.
Who introduced it to you?
Well, that might give it away. It wasn't you.
Oh, I don't care then.
Okay. It was introduced. To me by Eric.
Diamonds.
No. All right. So my number one is Teach You.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, I forgot about that one. I will say I had a very hard time with this list because I was trying to think of non-MogCon games. And because I don't write down non-MogCon games when I'm playing, I'm just trying to remember all the cons I'm being to and the games that I play there. I forgot Teach You.
Yeah. I went through my collection and I'm like, I don't remember necessarily. Because I only started recording plays, a few years ago. So then I tried doing the collection. I went through the games played, and then it was a combination of, okay, who introduced me to that game? Or, and then it was, okay, they did, but did I already know about that game? Did I ask them to to show it to me? So yeah, by the time you whittle it down, it was pretty difficult. So anyways, my number one is Teach You. So Teach You is a card game. It is a ladder climbing game, really. Even though people say it's a trick taking game, it's more of a ladder climbing game. But the thing I love about Teach You is that you're playing it with partners. It is, it's going to be a 4-player game. You're playing it with partners. And it's pretty simple. Once you play a round or two, you pretty much know how it works. So it's a 52 card deck, and then there's 4 special cards. The 4 special cards obviously have some different abilities. You have the Phoenix, the Dragon, the Dog, and the Mahjong card. And the Dog lets you switch.
The dog passes
start initiative or whatever you want to call it in this game. And then The one of the cards acts as a wild card where you can use it as a you can even use it as a half a point or a half a card or whatever. So say it's someone plays out a single 9, you could you play that out there, it could make it a 9.5 or whatever the case may be. Um, so you have these special cards. So in this game, since it's a ladder climbing game, it's going to be based off whoever leads out is going to establish what type of cards you're playing. So if they lead out with a single card, everyone can only play a single card. If they lead out with pairs, it's got to be pairs. If it's a full house, it's got to be a full house. If it's a straight of 7 cards or 8 cards, then it has to be a straight matching those same number of cards. So they play a 7-card straight, you got to play a 7-card straight. You can beat them obviously by playing a higher 7-card straight, but you have to stick to the number of cards that they played out. And then of course you have the what they call the bomb. The bomb is a 4 of a kind, and for me it's hard to get. Other people seem to get them all the time, but the bomb will beat anything, and you can play that bomb for on let's see, you can play the bomb at any time on any
Yes.
anything that's played out there.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever seen it played on a single card before, but anyways, so you lead out, people are going to follow. They can either follow and play something that beats the card that was played before them, or they can pass. Gets all the way back around to the person who is winning and everyone else has passed, then they win that hand. You're going to keep going around and trying to be you want to be the first player out. First player out has the advantage of at the end of that round when the last player standing is there, all the cards that the person who's going out last has won during that hand is going to go to the first player who went out. So they're going to steal all their cards if they were the first player to go out. So you definitely don't want to be the last player. You always want to try to be the first player, because you can also in this game you can declare a Tichu, or you can declare a grand Tichu. And the main difference is that a grand Tichu is when you're only looking at the first 6 or 7 cards that are dealt to you, and then the Tichu is when you've got all the cards. Because I think you're going to get, what do you end up with, like 15?
It was
13 cards in your hand. Are there? Yeah, because I thought the entire deck was dealt out, or wasn't it? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't. It's been a while since I played Tichu.
Anyway, anyways, it doesn't matter. You're initially gonna get like 6 cards. You're gonna look at them. You can declare Grand Tichu, or you can say keep dealing, and then you're gonna get the rest of your cards. If at that point in time you feel like you can be the first player to go out, you can just call a Tichu. And what that's gonna do is that if you've declared a Tichu and you are the first player that goes out, you're gonna get a 100-point bonus. Every round is going to be worth 100 points, and it's going to be generally it'll be divided up. One team might get 40 and the other team gets 60. Sometimes they'll get all 100 points. And it's pretty straightforward. There's only like 3 cards that do any scoring. I think it's 5s, 10s, and kings. 5s, 10s, and kings, I think, that actually score, that are worth points. And then I think I can never remember off the top of my head if it's the Phoenix or the Dragons one's worth 25 and one's worth negative 25 or something like that. But anyways, it's been a while since we played. We probably, whenever the last, I take that back. I have played with Amy and the kids a couple times, but even that's probably been a year since I've played it. So I just really enjoy it. I like card games. I like ladder climbing games. I like trick taking games. And I always tell people this gives me the vibe of euchre from back in the college days of playing it with partners. So a lot of fun. For me, it's a very addictive game. It's like where you get done playing, you're like, okay, we got 15 minutes. Well, let's play. Let's continue our game of Tichu. Because you play up to 1,000 points, or you can play for less. You can play 500, 1,000. I think is probably generally the typical scoring. But anyways, that is Tichu.
Yeah, that's a good choice. Like I said, I forgot about that one. That would have been on my list. My number 1 is another Dice Tower game. And I think you were taught the game at the same time. And we had Tom Vassell introduce this game to us. So this is a card game.
It's a card game.
Yeah.
Point salad?
Yep. Point salad.
Really? Okay.
Again, it's another super light, fun card drafting game. There are rows of cards on the table, and these cards are going to be different types of food, vegetables like tomatoes. Okay, technically, I guess tomatoes are fruit, but lemons, eggplant, whatever, the lettuce, different types of fruits and vegetables. On one side, they're going to be the fruits and vegetables. The other side is going to be scoring. So you're going to make the decision on whether you're going to be doing the scoring or the vegetable side. So it could be that I have scoring ones that say for every combination of lettuce, tomato, and cucumber, I get a point or 3 points, or whatever else. But I might have other scoring cards that say for every cucumber you have, it's going to be -1 point. I can also see what the other scoring things are that other people have. So I may see, oh, Dean wants a whole bunch of tomatoes. So I'm just going to take the tomato card away from him. Just so he can't get it, because every time you take a card, the cards are shifted down. Each card will tell you, I believe the requirement cards will tell you what type of vegetables on the other side of it. So you are strategically not only getting cards that work for you, but also trying to make sure that other people don't get the cards they need. Like, again, this is it's funny that a lot of the games on this list are definitely on the lighter side. Because I find at cons, I tend to gravitate towards, for learning new games, I tend to gravitate to lighter games just because I find it more difficult to learn a very heavy game in the con situation. But this one, I think you and I were down at that Dice Terror Con to actually be at the hot games table or in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least I was. And then at the beginning of it, Tom saying, well, what game do you guys want to learn? He said, well, why don't we, I'll teach you point salad. I'd seen point salad before and just went, forget it. I'm not interested. Ended up playing, going, wow, this is a lot of fun. Again, I went home and bought this game. So yeah, point salad, drafting, getting the vegetables you need to fulfill your point things at the bottom. And quite often you are going to have point things that are counter to each other. But it's just a matter of saying which one is going to be worth more that I can live with the minus points. And again, trying to screw your neighbor so they can't get the cards they need to fulfill their maximized points. Again, very family friendly, 15, 20 minutes to play, plays 2 to 6 players, another lightweight game, 1.16. But this one was a lot of fun. And it's also maybe one of my highest rated games that I have on this list. Maybe Welcome To might be higher than this, but it's fairly popular. And one that I would say, if you are looking for a family friendly card game, Point Salad is just that. So that is my number one, Point Salad by Molly Johnson, Robert Melvin, and Sean Stankiewicz, put up by AEG.
Yeah, I remember him introducing us to this game, and I enjoyed it too. I actually did go out and buy it as well. I just didn't think about it for the list. I guess, I mean, primarily because I just like the other games more. But yeah, looking at your list, I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, you so you don't actually go out and buy the lighter filler games on your own before someone's introduced them to you.
No,
That's
I
how they
don't.
get on your radar. So,
Yep.
All right. Did you you mentioned an honorable mention earlier? What was it again? Fox in the Forest.
Fox in the Forest. I actually had 5 honorable mentions.
Oh, well, what'd you have?
So I had Fox in the Forest, which you introduced me to. I had London, that Eric introduced us to. Signori, which you introduced us to. Century: A New World. That's the only of the Century Spice games I played.
Okay.
And Hanabi. And Hanabi was actually the first one I thought about, because I was introduced to that on the very first night of my very first con. I was intrigued by the gameplay. I never ended up buying it because it was, after you'd played it a few times, I kind of fell off for me. So, but yeah, those are my 5 honorable mentions.
Okay. Yeah, I've never played Hanabi. Yeah, I had a couple. I had like maybe 3. So I had Antiquity that you had introduced me to and the reason I put it as honorable mentions because I mean, it's a splatter game, so splatters weren't really anything that I was truly interested in. And it's one where we were just kind of randomly walking through the game library, and you're like, "Hey, you want to do antiquity?" I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then we were mocked by people for the next 2 hours as we were still sorting chits at that point in time. So antiquity was one. The other one I had was First Class, which you introduced us to at MogCon, and that was one where, I mean, even though the designer has some pedigree because he's Russian railroads, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's a game that I hadn't really paid attention to. I really enjoyed it. I don't think I've played it again since. If I did go out and buy it, and I think this is another one of those where people either seem to really like the game or they really hate that game, from discussions I've seen. And then the last one was a game that I think, again, this was a Mog one that you brought it. You had to have brought it because I didn't own it, and that was Cryptid.
Oh yeah.
So I really do enjoy that game. I'd have to play it at a con because I don't think it would get played one way or the other after that. But yeah, that was a fun game. That whole kind of trying to suss out the location of the monster based off of either the question that you're asking your opponent, or you're placing your the cylinder out there, like, is it here? No, darn it. I'm always one hex off, but I do enjoy that game quite a bit.
Yep.
So all right, well, I think that's probably going to wrap up this episode of the Board Game Buffet podcast, episode number 95. We have heard from well, I guess we just have heard from one person so far that wants to do something for the 100th episode. If you're interested in maybe doing something for the 100th episode, could be, whatever. I don't know. You suggest it. Be joining us for the recording or recording something on your own and adding it. Maybe it's about a game. Maybe it's about how much Graham has impacted your life at this point in time. Maybe it's a list of another 10 games that we should stop talking about. I don't know what it'll be, but feel free, shoot us an email, boardgamebuffetpodcast@gmail.com, or send us something on Twitter, Facebook, so on and so forth. Anything else, Graham?
No, I think that is it. Yeah, we
All
are
right.
definitely looking for stuff for our 100th episode. And like I said, I'm sure we're going to get an influx of people saying, you need to add this game to the vault.
There you go. You need to add one of the contributors to the vault. So, all right. Well, as always, please take care of yourselves and your loved ones. See ya.
See ya.